The vanishing. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the towering glass ceiling of the Maplewood Plaza, a sprawling shopping mall in the heart of Orlando, Florida. The scent of roasted coffee beans from a nearby cafe mingled with the aroma of buttery pretzels and fresh perfume from the department stores. The sounds of laughter, hurried footsteps, and the occasional announcement over the loudspeakers created a symphony of everyday life. Angela Carter moved through the crowded space with a purpose, holding onto the tiny hand of her 7-year-old daughter, Emily. At 38 years old, Angela was a single mother juggling the responsibilities of work and parenting. Her long brown hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and faint lines of exhaustion marred her otherwise delicate features. But her daughter, Emily, was her entire world. That Saturday afternoon had started like any other. Emily had begged her mother to take her to the mall for new sketchbooks and colored pencils. She had recently discovered a passion for drawing, and Angela, despite her busy schedule, had promised her daughter a small shopping trip. "Please, Mommy, just 1 hour. I need more colors," Emily had pleaded, her big hazel eyes shining with excitement. Angela had smiled, unable to resist. "All right, 1 hour. But no running off, okay?" Emily had nodded enthusiastically, gripping her mother's hand as they entered the mall. They had spent the first 20 minutes browsing the stationery store. Emily carefully selected her items, her small fingers brushing over the different art supplies with a look of pure delight. Angela watched her with quiet admiration, thankful for these small, peaceful moments. But then, fate intervened. As they exited the store, Emily tugged at Angela's hand. "Mommy, I have to go to the bathroom." Angela checked her watch. They still had 40 minutes before they needed to leave. "All right, sweetheart. There's a restroom near the food court. Let's go." They made their way past the bustling crowd toward the brightly lit restroom area near the indoor play zone. It was a well-maintained part of the mall, busy but safe, or so Angela had always thought. When they reached the entrance, Emily hesitated. "I can go by myself, Mommy," she said confidently. Angela bit her lip, hesitating. She had always been overprotective, but Emily was at that age where she wanted a bit more independence. "I'll wait right here," Angela finally said, nodding toward a nearby bench. Emily beamed. "Okay, I'll be quick." Angela watched her daughter disappear into the restroom, the door swinging shut behind her. She exhaled and sat down, pulling out her phone to check messages. She had barely scrolled through 2 notifications when she felt it, a sudden sharp unease that made her stomach twist. She checked her watch. 3 minutes had passed. Then 5. Then 7. Angela frowned. Emily was a fast restroom user. This was taking too long. She got up, walking toward the restroom door and calling out softly. "Emily? Are you okay, sweetheart?" No response. Angela pushed the door open and stepped inside. The restroom was empty. Completely empty. The stall doors stood ajar, mirrors gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and there was not a single sound. No running water, no rustling of clothes, nothing. Angela's heart plummeted. Her breath came in short gasps as she rushed forward, checking every stall. Nothing. Emily was gone. Her mind refused to accept it. This wasn't possible. She had been gone for barely 10 minutes. She must have come out and walked back toward the play zone, maybe thinking Angela had moved. "Yes," Angela murmured to herself, already sprinting out of the restroom, her eyes scanning the crowd. She called out, her voice growing desperate. "Emily, Emily." But her daughter was nowhere in sight. A panic unlike anything she had ever known consumed her. She grabbed the nearest mall employee, her voice shaking. "My daughter. She was just in the restroom. She's missing." The young employee's eyes widened. "Let's get security. Please, try to stay calm." Angela couldn't stay calm. Not when her baby was missing. Within minutes, mall security officers surrounded her, asking rapid questions. What was she wearing? What time did you last see her? Could she have wandered off? Angela answered everything between gasping breaths, her body trembling. Then came the surveillance footage. Angela sat in the dimly lit security room, eyes locked on the grainy black and white monitor as the footage from the restroom entrance played. There was Emily, skipping inside. 3 minutes later, a tall figure, wearing a black hoodie, entered behind her. Angela's blood ran cold. Another minute passed, and then the figure exited the restroom, carrying something. Angela's lungs seized as she screamed. Her daughter, her Emily, was in the arms of a stranger. And just like that, she was gone. The search begins. Angela Carter's world collapsed in on itself the moment she saw the grainy security footage. The dimly lit room where she sat felt suffocating, the air thick with the sterile smell of electronics and stale coffee. A buzzing noise filled her ears, drowning out everything except the horrifying image looping before her eyes. The shadowy figure in a black hoodie exiting the restroom, carrying something. No, not something. Someone. Her body went rigid, and her vision tunneled in on that one moment. Her daughter in the arms of a stranger, being taken away from her, disappearing beyond the camera's reach. A gasp tore from her throat, followed by an anguished cry so raw and primal that the security officer beside her instinctively flinched. Angela's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of the desk, her nails digging into the cold surface. No, no, no. Rewind it. Play it again. Her voice cracked with desperation. The security officer, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a solemn face, gave her a pained look before nodding. He replayed the footage, slowing it down frame by frame. Angela stared at the screen, willing herself to see something, anything, that would tell her who this person was. But the black hoodie concealed everything, the face completely hidden under the shadow of the hood. Her chest heaved with panic. Where did they go? What entrance did they use? Where were the cameras pointed next? The officer exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples before clicking the mouse. We're checking now. Give us a moment, Miss Carter. I need you to stay calm. But how could she stay calm? Her child had just been stolen from right under her nose, in a public mall, in broad daylight. Emily was 7 years old. She was afraid of the dark. She hated being alone. She still slept with the stuffed panda Angela had bought her for her 3rd birthday. And now she was out there, with a stranger, somewhere Angela couldn't reach. The thought made her physically sick. Another officer, a younger man with a sharp jawline and an empathetic gaze, knelt beside her chair. Ma'am, I need you to tell me exactly what your daughter was wearing today. Every detail you can remember. Angela swallowed hard, forcing her mind to focus, even as her hands trembled. She was wearing a pink t-shirt with little daisies on it, blue jeans, white sneakers with purple laces. Her hair was in pigtails. Her voice quivered with each word. She had her yellow backpack with her sketchbook inside. The officer nodded, scribbling the details down in a notepad. Okay, that helps. We're going to send out an Amber Alert immediately. Amber Alert. The word sent another wave of nausea through Angela's gut. That was something she had only ever seen on the news, never something she thought would apply to her own child. The security footage shifted, now showing a wider view of the mall corridor outside the restroom. Angela held her breath as the shadowy figure carrying Emily emerged, moving with deliberate but casual strides. The figure weaved effortlessly through the crowded mall, as if they had done this before. Nobody seemed to notice. People passed by, oblivious, busy with their own shopping, their own lives, unaware that a kidnapper was in their midst. Angela's stomach twisted into knots. Why did no one stop them? Why did no one see? The figure made their way toward the nearest mall exit, a side entrance near the parking lot, a less crowded area, away from the main foot traffic. Then, just before the camera angle shifted again, Angela saw it. A white van. It was parked near the curb, its side door slightly ajar. And then, in a blur of movement, the figure climbed in, the door slid shut, and the van sped off. Angela's breath left her in a strangled sob. It had taken less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes. That was all it took for her child to vanish into the unknown. She shot up from her chair, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. "Did you get the license plate?" she demanded, her voice frantic. "Can you zoom in? Anything." The security officer clicked at the screen, his expression grim. "The camera resolution isn't clear enough to get the full plate. We only have a partial number." Angela felt the world spin around her. Her child had been taken in a van with no full license plate, no clear suspect, and no immediate lead. The walls of the security room felt like they were closing in on her. She turned to the officers, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Find her," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please, find my baby." The officers exchanged somber glances before the older one spoke. "We're going to do everything we can. We're alerting all patrol units, checking traffic cameras, and getting this information out to every law enforcement agency in the state. But, Mom, I have to be honest with you. Every second counts." Angela knew what that meant. If they didn't find Emily soon, the chances of finding her at all would grow smaller and smaller. And that was a reality Angela could not accept. A mother's desperation. The drive home from the mall that evening was a blur. Angela Carter sat in the back of the police car, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles turned white. Every breath she took felt like she was breathing in fire. Every inhale burned her chest. Every exhale felt like it carried pieces of her shattered soul. The officer driving the car kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable, but Angela could feel it. The pity, the helplessness in his eyes. She didn't want pity. She wanted her daughter. The moment they pulled up to her driveway, she felt a terrible weight settle over her. Her house, once a warm, safe place, now felt like a tomb. The porch light flickered slightly in the night breeze, illuminating the front door that Emily had run through 1,000 times, laughing, chattering, alive. But now, that door might never see her return. The thought sent a stab of pain through Angela's heart. As she stepped out of the car, the officer spoke gently. "Miss Carter, I know you're overwhelmed, but we're doing everything we can. The Amber Alert has been sent out statewide. Our teams are combing through the traffic cameras. If the van passed any tolls or major intersections, we'll find it." Angela barely nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. She walked inside in a daze, her body moving on autopilot. The house was too quiet, and that was the worst part. The air smelled like fabric softener and faint traces of Emily's bubblegum shampoo. The living room was just as they had left it. A coloring book still open on the coffee table, Emily's small sneakers placed neatly by the door. A lump formed in Angela's throat as she stepped further inside, her eyes falling on the framed pictures lining the walls. Emily's face smiled back at her from the photos. One from her 5th birthday, covered in chocolate cake. One from the zoo trip last summer, her little hands clutching the stuffed penguin. One from Christmas, wearing fuzzy pajamas and hugging Angela so tight it had almost knocked her over. Angela pressed a trembling hand against the wall to steady herself. How could Emily be missing? How could she just be gone? A sob tore from her throat, and she barely made it to the couch before collapsing onto it. The silence of the house suffocated her. She could still hear Emily's laughter echoing in her mind, could still feel the tiny weight of her daughter's hand in hers just hours ago. She squeezed her eyes shut, gripping her own arms as if trying to hold herself together, but she was crumbling. The ringing of her phone startled her out of her spiraling thoughts. Her heart leaped as she scrambled to answer, barely checking the screen before pressing it to her ear. "Hello." Her voice was breathless, desperate. "Angela." A familiar voice replied. It was Detective Ryan Calloway, the lead investigator on Emily's case. His tone was calm, controlled, too controlled. Angela sat up straighter, her hands tightening around the phone. "Did you find anything?" There was a pause on the other end. Too long of a pause. "We're following leads," Calloway finally said, his voice careful. The white van was last seen exiting the mall parking lot and turning onto I-4 West. We're reviewing traffic footage along that route. So far, we haven't been able to track where it exited. Angela's stomach twisted. What do you mean? That road has cameras everywhere. Some of them are down for maintenance, he admitted. It's complicating things. Angela's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles ached. You're telling me that my daughter is missing, and the only real lead we have is lost because some damn cameras aren't working. I know how this sounds, Calloway said, his voice steady but laced with frustration of his own. But we're not giving up. We have officers checking every gas station, motel, and rest stop along the interstate. If they stopped anywhere, we'll find them. Angela let out a shaky breath, her body coiled with tension. It's been hours, Ryan. Hours. Do you know what can happen in that time? The detective's silence spoke volumes. Angela swallowed down the bile rising in her throat. I need to do something, she whispered. I can't just sit here and... We're already handling it, Calloway interrupted. I know this is unbearable, but right now, the best thing you can do is stay by your phone in case we need you. Angela didn't want to stay put. She wanted to tear the city apart. She wanted to search every alleyway, knock on every door, scream Emily's name into the night until her voice gave out. But what good would that do? She let out a shuddering breath. Okay. I'll call the moment we get anything solid. Angela hung up, her hands shaking as she dropped the phone onto the coffee table. She stared at it for a long moment before an idea suddenly struck her. The van. If the police were struggling to track it, maybe there was another way. Without wasting another second, she grabbed her laptop from the kitchen counter and opened a search browser. She typed, "Missing white van Orlando Amber alert surveillance footage." It was a long shot, but sometimes local businesses had their own security cameras. If the van had passed near any gas stations, shops, or private properties, someone might have caught it on tape. Angela spent the next 2 hours scouring through online forums, news articles, and local Facebook pages. She posted in community groups, pleading with anyone who had seen a white van near the mall to come forward. She called nearby gas stations, one after another, asking if they had surveillance cameras that might have caught anything. Most calls ended the same way. "No, ma'am, our cameras don't cover the road." "Sorry, we don't keep footage that far back." "No, I don't think we saw anything suspicious." Angela refused to give up. Then, just as she was about to close her laptop, she found something. A grainy video thumbnail on a local forum caught her eye. The title read, "Suspicious white van caught on camera. Maitland gas station, 5:42 p.m." Angela's heart leaped into her throat. Maitland was only 20 minutes from the mall. She clicked the video. The footage was low quality, likely taken from an old surveillance system, but she could make out the shape of a white van pulling up near the gas station's convenience store. The timestamp in the corner showed it was recorded just minutes after Emily was taken. Angela leaned forward, eyes glued to the screen. The van stopped, its side door partially open. For a split second, just a split second, a small figure appeared inside the van. A child-sized silhouette. Angela's entire body went cold. Her daughter was inside that van. Before she could think, before she could second-guess herself, she grabbed her car keys and bolted toward the door. She didn't care that the police had told her to stay put. She didn't care that she was acting recklessly. She had a lead. And nothing was going to stop her from following it. A trail gone cold. Angela's hands gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity as she sped down the nearly deserted highway, the taillights of passing cars blurring through the fog of her panic. The gas station from the footage. The only real lead she had was in Maitland, a 20-minute drive from her house. The entire trip, her heart pounded in her chest like a drum of war, her breath shallow as the same grainy image played over and over in her mind. The white van, the small figure inside, the briefest glimpse of what could be her daughter. Could it really be Emily? Could she have found the first true clue in the search for her little girl? She didn't wait for the police. Couldn't wait. Every second mattered. The road ahead stretched endlessly, illuminated only by the pale glow of streetlights and the occasional flicker of headlights from the opposite direction. Her phone sat on the passenger seat, silent, the weight of its absence gnawing at her. No calls from Detective Calloway. No updates. No breakthrough. For a fleeting second, doubt clawed at her. Was she making a mistake? Could she be chasing something that wasn't even real? Was she wasting time when she should be home, waiting for official word? No. She shook her head violently, pushing the thought away. She had to do this. As she reached Maitland, the surroundings became less commercial, more desolate, a stretch of road lined with rundown motels, old gas stations, and convenience stores that never truly closed, but never really welcomed customers either. The gas station from the footage came into view, its flickering neon sign barely illuminating the cracked pavement of the lot. Angela pulled in, her tires screeching slightly as she came to a halt. The place was practically empty, save for an older man behind the counter inside, his cigarette glowing faintly as he leaned against the glass window. A single pickup truck was parked near the gas pumps, its driver nowhere to be seen. Angela jumped out of her car, slamming the door shut behind her as she hurried inside. The bell above the door let out a hollow chime as she entered. The man behind the counter, mid-50s, grizzled beard, tired eyes, looked up from his newspaper, his gaze flickering with mild interest before settling into wariness. She knew what he was thinking. A woman, frantic, disheveled, with wild eyes and desperation dripping from every inch of her being. He had seen this before. Angela didn't care. She marched straight to the counter, placing her palms flat against the scratched surface. "I need to see your security footage from today." Her voice was urgent, shaky, but firm. The man raised an eyebrow, his cigarette dangling between his lips. He took a slow drag before speaking. "Lady, we don't keep footage for random customers." Angela's pulse pounded. She didn't have time for this. "My daughter is missing," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "She was taken, and I have footage that shows a van just outside this gas station, at this exact location, today, at 5:42 p.m. Please." The man exhaled a long breath, studying her for a moment. Something in her eyes must have convinced him that she wasn't lying because he sighed, grumbling under his breath as he turned toward the back office. "Hold on." Angela gripped the counter, her nails pressing into the surface. "Please, please let there be something." The man disappeared for what felt like a lifetime before finally returning, carrying the dusty monitor attached to an old DVR system. He set it on the counter, scrolling through timestamps until he landed on 5:42 p.m. Angela leaned in, her breath shallow as the screen flickered to life. The footage was blurry, low resolution, and riddled with static. But she saw it. The white van. It pulled into the station, just as she had seen in the original video she found online. The side door slid open, and for the briefest moment, the small silhouette appeared. Angela stared. Her heart stopped. The figure was tiny, too small to be an adult. The child hesitated at the van's open door, as if she wanted to run. But before she could, a hand shot out from inside, yanking her back in. The van's door slammed shut, and just like that, it peeled away from the gas station, disappearing into the night. Angela's body shook. "That's her," she whispered, voice hoarse with shock and fury. "That's my daughter." The gas station clerk remained silent for a moment before muttering, "Jesus Christ," under his breath. He rewound the footage, pausing at the moment the van door opened. Angela reached for her phone, snapping a picture of the screen. The license plate was still blurry, but she could make out part of it -37X. A partial plate. It wasn't much, but it was something. She wasted no time. She dialed Calloway's number with shaking fingers. The phone rang once, twice. He picked up on the third ring. Angela. His voice was tired, but alert. What's wrong? She could barely form the words. I found them, she gasped. I found the van. I have footage. Silence. Then, his voice sharpened like a blade. Where are you? Maitland, the gas station on Oak Ridge Drive. The van stopped here after leaving the mall. I saw a child inside, Calloway. I think it was Emily. Angela heard a sharp movement on the other end, like Calloway had just jumped out of his chair. Stay there. I'm on my way. The call ended. Angela turned back to the screen, staring at the frozen image of the van, the hand pulling the child back inside, the faint outline of her daughter's tiny face in the shadows. Terror coiled in her stomach. They had her. She was still alive. But for how long? Angela clutched the edge of the counter, swallowing the bile in her throat. She wasn't just going to sit here and wait. She was going to find her daughter, even if she had to tear this entire city apart to do it. Racing against time, Angela stood frozen in front of the gas station monitor, her pulse a deafening drumbeat in her ears. The grainy image of the white van with the tiny silhouette inside burned itself into her mind. The thought of Emily, so close yet so impossibly far away, sent a fresh wave of nausea through her body. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay upright as she waited for Detective Calloway. Outside, the night stretched thick and oppressive. The neon glow of the gas station sign buzzed faintly above her, casting ghostly flickers of light across the cracked pavement. The air was humid, heavy with the scent of gasoline and asphalt, yet Angela barely noticed. Her entire body was wired with tension, her muscles coiled so tight that they felt like they might snap. The gas station clerk, still leaning against the counter, let out a slow whistle. "This is some serious shit," he muttered, shaking his head as he took another drag from his cigarette. "You think those people still got your little girl?" Angela turned to him, her eyes blazing with a mix of fear and fury. "I don't think," she said, voice low and dangerously steady. "I know." Before the man could respond, the sharp screech of police sirens shattered the silence of the night. Angela's heart leaped into her throat as she rushed outside, just in time to see two squad cars skid into the lot, their flashing red and blue lights casting eerie shadows across the pavement. Detective Ryan Calloway stepped out of the first vehicle, his face a mask of grim determination. His black trench coat billowed slightly in the wind as he strode toward her, his sharp green eyes scanning her face for any sign of hesitation. "Show me," he ordered. Angela didn't hesitate. She led him back inside the gas station, where the footage was still paused on the horrifying moment. The hand reaching out, the small figure being pulled back inside, the door slamming shut. Calloway exhaled sharply, rubbing the back of his neck as he studied the monitor. His partner, a younger officer named Detective Morales, leaned in closer, his dark brows furrowed. "This confirms the van was moving after the abduction," Morales murmured. "That means she was alive at 5:42 p.m. Angela's stomach twisted. "That was hours ago," she whispered. "What if—" "No," Calloway interrupted, his voice firm. "We're not thinking like that. She's alive. And now we have a lead." He turned to Morales. "Can we enhance the plate?" Morales was already snapping photos of the screen with his phone. "Maybe. It's blurry, but we got 3 clear digits minus 37X. That's enough to start running partial matches." Calloway nodded. "Good. Get every available officer on it. I want them coming through every database. Traffic violations, stolen vehicles, rental cars, anything that matches a white van with 37X in the plate." Angela's fingers dug into the counter. "And what if that doesn't work?" Calloway's jaw tightened. "Then we keep looking." A restless silence fell between them. Angela's mind raced, turning over possibilities, imagining worst-case scenarios she couldn't afford to accept. Then a thought hit her like lightning. "The driver," she blurted out, turning back to the screen. "We keep looking at the van, but what about the person inside?" Calloway frowned. What do you mean? Angela pointed at the blurred figure in the driver's seat, barely visible through the windshield. There has to be something about them we can use. Their height, build, maybe even a tattoo if they rolled their sleeves up. Morales glanced at the screen, then at the clerk. You got any other cameras? A different angle. The clerk scratched his chin. Maybe. Lem checked the side lot camera. He clicked a few buttons, and a new angle filled the screen. This one showing the van from the side, capturing a partial reflection of the driver in the gas station window. Angela's breath caught. There. A glimpse of the person behind the wheel. It wasn't clear enough to make out a face, but she saw one crucial detail. A scar. A deep, jagged scar running from the man's left ear down to his jawline. Her heart nearly stopped. I know him, she whispered. Calloway's head snapped toward her. What? Angela swallowed, her throat dry as sandpaper. I know that scar. I've seen it before. She closed her eyes, reaching deep into her memory, forcing herself to dig through the past until the image came crashing back into focus. 4 years ago, back at South Key Mall, not long after she had started working there, a new security guard had been hired. Tall, lean, dangerous-looking. He was always quiet, always lurking near the back hallways, watching. One day, Angela had caught him staring at Emily while they were in the food court. At the time, she had brushed it off as harmless curiosity. But now she realized how wrong she had been. The scar, the way he moved, the eerie stillness about him. It was him. I saw him at my mall, she whispered, her blood running ice cold. He worked security there. Calloway's face darkened. You're sure? Angela nodded, her stomach lurching with dread. Positive. Morales immediately started typing into his tablet. I'll pull up past employee records for South Key Mall. Angela's hands balled into fists. If this man had been watching Emily for years, that meant. Her body shuddered with realization. This wasn't random. They had been planning this for a long time. Angela's breath came in short gasps. She turned to Calloway, her voice trembling but resolute. We're running out of time. Calloway met her gaze, his expression unreadable. But then, slowly, he nodded. I know. He turned to Morales. The second we get a name, I want his entire history. Past addresses, known associates, family members. Anything that can give us a location. Angela's hands clenched at her sides. No more waiting. No more hoping. She was going to find her daughter. And she would burn the whole damn world down if she had to. The reckoning. The clock was against them. Every second that passed felt like another piece of Emily slipping further away. Angela's body was tight with unspent energy, her heart hammering as she paced the gas station floor, while Detective Calloway and Morales worked furiously to track down the man with the scar. The name finally came 20 minutes later. Gregory Greg Morrow, a former security guard at South Key Mall, fired 4 years ago after multiple complaints from female employees, women who had caught him lurking, watching, waiting. Angela's stomach tightened with disgust. According to the report Morales pulled up, Greg Morrow had a criminal past, petty theft, harassment charges, even an old restraining order filed by an ex-girlfriend who claimed he had become obsessive after their breakup. But nothing compared to what Angela feared he had done now. This guy's a predator, Calloway muttered, scanning the file. And now he has your daughter. Angela's fists clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. Where is he? She demanded. Morel zoomed in on the last known address tied to Morrow's name. A rundown, abandoned motel on the outskirts of Orlando, 25 miles away. Calloway looked at Angela, eyes firm. We're moving now. They rushed outside to the police vehicles. The sirens blared the moment the tires screeched onto the pavement, accelerating into the darkness at breakneck speed. Angela rode with Calloway in the lead car, her heart slamming against her ribs as the city blurred past them. This was it. Every nerve in her body was alive with the electric charge of fear and fury. Angela, Calloway said, voice steady but urgent. When we get there, I need you to stay in the car. Angela snapped her head toward him. Like hell I will. Listen to me, Calloway insisted. If this guy is armed, we're going in first. We can't risk him using Emily as a... I don't care. Angela's voice was raw, edged with pure, unfiltered rage. I'm not just sitting there while my daughter is inside with that monster. Calloway exhaled sharply but didn't argue further. He knew there was no stopping her. The motel came into view like a scene ripped from a nightmare. It was a rotting husk of a building, its faded neon sign flickering weakly, the parking lot cracked and littered with broken glass. A few cars sat in the lot, their windows coated in grime. The stench of mildew and damp concrete clung to the air. The moment the cars skidded to a stop, Calloway and the officers swarmed out, guns drawn, forming a perimeter around the building. Morels barked orders into his radio, calling for backup. Angela barely heard them. Her eyes were locked on a single door, room 214. The blinds were drawn, but a faint glow of yellow light seeped through the edges. Angela's breath came fast and shallow. Emily was in there. She moved before anyone could stop her, sprinting toward the door. Angela, wait. Calloway hissed, but she didn't care. She reached the door just as a scream shattered the air. Emily. The sound ripped through Angela like a blade, igniting something primal inside her. She didn't think. She acted. With a strength she didn't know she had, she kicked the door open, sending it crashing against the wall. The room was a horror show. The stench of unwashed clothes and stale beer filled the air. Trash littered the floor. A dingy mattress was shoved against the corner. The blankets bunched into a twisted heap. And in the center of it all, Greg Morrow, his scared face twisted in rage, his fingers digging into Emily's tiny arm. Angela saw red. Without hesitation, she lunged at him, blind to everything else. Her body collided with his, sending them both crashing into a wooden table. The lamp shattered, plunging the room into flickering darkness. Morrow grunted, stunned for a split second, just long enough for Angela to scramble to her feet, her mind blazing with one thought: Emily. Her daughter was curled against the wall, shaking, her hazel eyes wide with terror. Angela reached for her, pulling her close, shielding her with her body. It's okay, baby, I'm here, she whispered, stroking Emily's hair as tears streamed down her face. Morrow staggered to his feet, his eyes wild. You. He barely got the word out before Calloway's gun was in his face. Down. Now. More officers flooded the room, weapons raised, their voices barking commands. Morrow froze, his gaze flickering between the officers and Angela. For a brief, terrifying moment, Angela thought he might try to run. But then Calloway pressed the barrel of his gun to the back of Morrow's skull. I said, down. Morrow dropped. Within seconds, the officers swarmed him, slamming him against the filthy floor, cuffing his hands behind his back. Angela didn't watch. She didn't care. All she cared about was the tiny, trembling body in her arms. Emily sobbing against her chest, clutching onto her with every ounce of strength her small body could muster. Mommy, she whimpered, her breath hot and ragged against Angela's neck. Angela held her tighter, rocking her gently, pressing kisses into her hair. I got you, she whispered, her voice breaking. I got you, baby. You're safe. You're safe. Emily clung to her, hiccuping through her tears, unable to form words. Angela pressed her forehead against her daughter's, sobbing quietly. It was over. Emily was safe. The nightmare was over. 3 days later, the news of Emily's rescue spread quickly. Local stations ran the story, dubbing Angela the mother who refused to give up. The police confirmed that Greg Morrow had been part of a larger trafficking ring, and his arrest led to the discovery of 2 other missing children in a separate location. But Angela didn't care about the headlines. She didn't care about the news. She only cared about the little girl sleeping peacefully beside her, safe in her own bed again. Angela lay awake, watching the gentle rise and fall of Emily's chest. Her daughter's small hand was wrapped around hers, even in sleep, as if afraid to let go. Angela would never let go. She had fought for Emily. She had found her. And she would never, never let anything take her away again. She pressed a kiss to Emily's forehead, whispering, "I love you, baby girl." Emily stirred slightly, a sleepy sigh escaping her lips. "I love you too, Mommy." Angela closed her eyes, breathing in the sweet, familiar scent of her child. For the first time in 4 years, her world was whole again. The reckoning. Final conclusion. The hotel room smelled like sweat, mildew, and something worse. Fear. Emily's sobs were muffled against Angela's chest, her tiny arms wrapped so tightly around her mother's neck that Angela feared she might never let go. And she wouldn't. She would hold her daughter for as long as it took. The chaos in the room was a blur. Greg Morrow, pinned to the floor, officers yelling commands, metal cuffs clicking into place. He struggled for a second, his scared face contorting in rage, but Calloway and the others held him firm, pressing his face into the filthy carpet with merciless precision. Angela barely noticed. Her fingers stroked through Emily's tangled hair, whispering soothing words even though her own voice was raw and shaking. The nightmare wasn't over until they were home. "Mommy," Emily whimpered against her, her little fingers gripping the fabric of Angela's shirt like a lifeline. "I've got you, baby," Angela whispered. "You're safe. You're safe now." Her daughter was so small, so fragile, yet somehow warm and alive in her arms. Alive. Angela had feared the worst, had nearly lost hope, but Emily was here. Nothing else mattered. Outside, the red and blue lights of the police cars flashed against the broken windows. Officers cleared out the rest of the motel, checking every room, searching for anyone else involved in the operation. Because this wasn't just Greg Morrow acting alone. Angela knew that. And so did Calloway. The detective walked up beside her, his face still tight with tension. His green eyes flickered between Angela and her daughter before resting on Morrow, now slumped on the floor in cuffs. "We got him," Calloway said, voice low but firm. "But we need more." Angela gently rocked Emily in her arms. The little girl's breathing was still uneven, her small body trembling in the aftermath of pure terror. Calloway continued. "Morrow was working for someone. We found messages on his phone. Someone was expecting Emily." Angela went still. The weight of those words hit like a freight train. Someone else was waiting for Emily. Someone had paid for her. Her stomach twisted violently. Calloway must have seen the fire ignite in her expression because he raised a hand in warning. "I promise you, we'll follow this trail. We'll find whoever was behind it." Angela looked down at Emily. She didn't want to chase monsters anymore. She didn't want to fight in the dark. She had her daughter back. That should have been enough. But the thought of another mother, somewhere out there, still waiting for her child, still searching, it burned inside Angela like acid. "What if I hadn't found her?" she whispered, mostly to herself. "What if it had been someone else's child?" Calloway exhaled, shoving a hand through his hair. "That's why we do this, Angela." His voice hardened. "That's why we keep fighting." Angela nodded. For now, Emily was safe. But she would never stop fighting for the others. 48 hours later, Angela sat on the couch in her small, familiar home, cradling a warm cup of tea between her palms. It was past midnight, but she couldn't sleep. Not yet. Across the room, Emily was curled up in a blanket, sleeping peacefully for the first time in 4 years. 4 years of not knowing. 4 years of wondering if she was still out there. Now, Emily was home. Angela should have felt whole again. But the scars of the past weren't so easily erased. The television hummed softly in the background, tuned to a news station covering Morrow's arrest. The headline read, "Child trafficking ring busted after missing girl rescued. Mother led police to suspect." Angela barely heard the words. Her focus was on Emily. The tiny rise and fall of her daughter's chest, the soft sound of her breathing, steady and real. Tears welled in Angela's eyes. But this time, they weren't just from pain. They were from relief, from love, from the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. Angela reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. The little girl stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep before settling again. For the first time in 4 years, Angela allowed herself to believe in peace. She pressed a soft kiss to Emily's forehead, whispering into the quiet, "You're safe now, baby." And for the first time since that terrible day at the mall, she knew, without a doubt, that it was finally true.